Yo, what's up, everybody? We are back. You guys tired of winning yet?
I'm just excited that you're here. I'm tired. My shoulders were tired actually from carrying you.
All the heavy lifting?
The devil's in the house to rise the sun.
So what? We got a bunch of stuff going on, man. There's tariffs happening. I know you guys have covered tariffs this week, but that's old news, man. Whatever you guys covered, that's over.
Old news.
All new
Changes
tariffs
every hour.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
So we're gonna get into tariffs. Talk a little bit about what maybe if you're a packaging buyer, if you're a packaging manufacturer, if you're just admire packaging,
if you're alive.
Yeah. What?
If you're alive, it will affect you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like maybe what you should be doing, maybe what you shouldn't be doing. Kind of get into some of these different things here, and any questions you guys have or any comments you guys have, because I'm sure you guys love talking tariffs, much as we do, because it's all winning. Win,
no matter what. Got money. And they stay there. Hands go up.
What's up, Ryan Box? We got Ryan coming in from Bloomberg. Watch yourself.
Actually, I'm Avelio, but all jokes aside, because we have every time we've talked about this topic, something different has happened with tariffs, right?
Yes.
But of the three of us in the packaging industry,
yes,
you work more closely with tariffed packaging coming into the US. I think that's probably right. Is that fair to say?
It's all fair to say.
Okay. So you bring a different perspective, and I think it would be interesting to walk us through, like, you haven't been here. So what has been happening in your world when it's like
vacation?
Camera one, camera two, tariff one, tariff two, tariff one, tariff two. Like what happens at a company like IDP Direct? I want to hear from your perspective on this topic.
Yeah. Well, all right. So first off,
you know what? Never mind. I don't. Corey.
Yes. So actually, Avelio. No.
Yes. No. All right. First off, let's start off like what is IDP, right? So they manufacture packaging, and then they own factories around the world, like literally own factories around the world.
Where specifically around the world though?
So they own a factory in China, they own a factory in Indonesia, one in Romania, and then one in Mexico.
Okay.
Right? And then in those, because of those locations, we're able to shift production from one site to another site pretty seamlessly, pretty quickly. So the supply chain is in place for that exact reason, to be able to move, all the materials are in the same places. Like we can ship to all these, we can all the equipment's there, so we can produce something in one place, and if something shifts, we can go to another and and get things done quickly. But aside from like what IDP is capable of doing, like the conversation I think that's just happening across brands, whether you're large brands working with us or small brands, what's happening out there is people, obviously people are freaking out, right? Because you see the brand, whatever the brand name is on the side of the building, that brand as a whole is not making a decision. It's the people inside, and the people inside are saying what's happening. They're saying what's going on in the news, and they start panicking, and they're seeing layoffs, and they're seeing tariffs jumping, prices going up 400%, like all these different things happening. They're like freaking out, and it doesn't usually all come at one time. So with that panic, and this happens to all of us, it's like when there's that panic happening, you feel like you have to do something, right? And if you're not doing something, or you're not taking a decision, or you're not planning ahead, you feel like you're about to get your head chopped off, like something bad's about to happen because you didn't make a choice, didn't make a decision.
Right.
And that's really, it's like that panic is really like the worst feeling, and it's the worst time to make a decision.
Right.
So,
good point.
As a company, what we're saying to all of the all the companies we work with and other brands that are reaching out to us is don't do anything. Take a minute, right? Because it's like you want to shift. Now I've seen a ton of ads out there from suppliers and companies and like, hey, we've got a factory in Albania or we've got it in Lithuania and we've got low tariffs, shift your production to us. If somebody would have made a decision and said, well, I'm producing packaging in wherever and I've got 25% tariffs and I can go to these companies and get packaging for 10% tariffs, there's a savings there.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just make a switch from one supply chain to another. One, it doesn't happen overnight. Two, you've got material, you've got quality, you've got production limitations. Like it's not all the same. And that's the big issue, right? Is like if you make that change, what happens afterwards? And had you made that change yesterday, the day before, and then tariffs change, now what? Now you look like a jerk. It's like,
don't you think
back, right?
And that's the challenge.
So like the snap decision, right? Like the ability to just say, okay, we're going to tariff and now we're not going to tariff, is I think indicative of the problem, which is like supply chains cannot react. It would be like, even if they said, I don't know, we're going to pause tariffs for 90 days, hypothetically, then that's still not enough time to really actually do anything differently, because supply chain. There was a guy on Twitter that I followed, and I'm trying to get him to come on our show. He makes toys for neurodiverse children, and he's got a pretty decent sized company. He makes his toys in China. He's tried to onshore them. He's tried to find other places. It just, that's where he's made them.
Is he in Utah?
He's in Idaho. And he has it got picked up by Fox News, the New York Post. He got a tariff bill for $346,000 that was like $24,000 a year ago, and he was like, what are my options, right? Like literally, and now it's like, so maybe now that the tariffs were rescinded, maybe somebody like that can then ship it to a country like Indonesia, and then from Indonesia, I don't know. There's probably other options now, but it's like, holy crap.
There's not. Here's the two things. One thing is that there's a lot of brands, a lot of, whether it's product or packaging or whatever, that have actually left their products in customs.
Yeah.
They're like, I can't afford to pay that bill, so it can't be released. A product that's sitting there. Had the tariffs not dropped, these people wouldn't be able to pay and bring the product in. So now that product's moving. So it's kind of screwing up supply chain timelines, because now you've got all this backlog, and it's only been a week.
Yeah.
Right. There's a backlog of product that's been abandoned because they couldn't pay for it. That's sitting there, whether it's clothing or shoes or toys or like everything, like go to the grocery store, all that stuff is like sitting there. Now it's being released as people are being able to pay 10% versus 40 or 80 or whatever it was, depending on what you were bringing stuff in. And then two, it all depended on the date that it got on the water. So tariffs were different. If your stuff was on a boat and the boat left the dock between the 4th and the 9th, your tariffs were you weren't charged tariffs. And then I think if it was like the 9th and the 10th, it was 10%. And then if it was after the 10th, I can't remember the exact dates. And today is the 10th. So if your product was actually moved on ship, then your tariffs were going to be the high. Yeah, then the high. Incredible. And then you're scrambling, and then on the 10th, it's like, it's going to be 10%.
And this isn't just to Chris's
unless
question, right?
Unless it's China, because China tariffs are 125%.
I think, yeah. To Chris's point, it's not just finished goods, right, Avelio? This is if you are making something here, you're making it. You have a widget that's already here, and you buy
raw materials, right?
And raw materials from there, that is still getting tariffed.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's crazy. And, I even saw like Mr. Beast said that he's looking at shifting his chocolate production
Mhm.
for his chocolate bars out of the U.S. because the import prices and the cost of cocoa are really high, and the import
It'll
tax
be cheaper.
it's cheaper to bring it in as a finished good than it is
Yeah.
to bring it
Bring
in
it.
as raw materials and make it here. So that was like crazy
Yeah.
to think
Yeah,
about.
because then you've got let's say 10 components that are all getting tariffed at different rates to assemble here at a higher cost versus just make it all somewhere for less and then bring it in at just one tariff rate.
Yeah.
100%.
Winning. Yeah.
Well, I do think because I made that point on my LinkedIn post to somebody, and the gentleman who was we weren't even arguing. I was just talking with him, and he got mad at me, and that's fine. And said he wouldn't follow my podcast. But
No,
he
but
said,
I
well,
mean,
he said until the big chocolate people
mhm.
start moving it out of the US, then that's when I'll care. And I was like, I think it matters for small and medium-sized businesses. I think the big brands, like what John is saying here, like the big brands will find a way. They have enough pull and push to find a way. But companies like John's company, or the toy manufacturer from Idaho, like these are the companies that are like, I would say it like this. For the three of us, we all have to pay income taxes. Imagine if you went to go file on April 12th and they said, actually, your income tax rate is going to be 58%. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
if you live in California, and I don't like California, then your income tax rate is going to be 150% to the federal government today. And then you're like, I don't know, I can't pay that.
Yeah.
What do I do? And your option is go bankrupt or figure it out. And that's what a lot of businesses, I think that's a big part of why it was like, okay, we got to pause this, because there were actually businesses who were like, I'm going to go out of business. You
We
can't
can't sustain this,
you
right?
can't unwind the entire supply chain in 2 days. It's impossible.
I mean, brands don't have, small companies specifically don't have the margins to absorb, 100% extra cost on goods. I mean, you can't,
No, not even close. And by the way, this is a challenge that I've had to people, is to say, like, if you're typing on your iPhone or on your computer wearing any clothing at all saying buy American, and you're living in a home, like
everyone I do
that home probably has Canadian lumber in it, right? The computers and the phones are all those things are made overseas. Your clothes are all pretty much made overseas. Like,
I mean, I posted a goofy picture of Costco hot dogs, like the price jumping to like $10 and whatever. And people are like, that's not going to happen because that's American beef. And it's
not.
like, it's not, but even the processing of that is done on imported equipment. The pipes that are used to water the field, like everything, it's not just a cow that just happens to be there. It's like everything that went into that piece of meat getting processed and turned into
it's a global economy, and
yeah.
people don't understand that just because something is made in the USA, it's affected by global sources.
That's right.
That's right.
Because of that, Hugh, and Hugh saying, because all the countries I've lived in, because of that, there's gonna be a tariff on the show.
We do, Rich. Yes, we do make our own clothes because we homeschool our children.
That's right.
No, we don't. We don't. I do make my own clothes on Canva, though. I go on there and make some t-shirts.
But you did make a you mentioned something earlier, which was like some of these countries are going to start moving products around from one high tariff country into another and then bring it into the US. That can't happen unless it can illegally, but it can't because as you ship product, you're shipping it on HTS codes. Right. So harmonized tariff schedule, like whatever that particular item is. So if it's a box, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever that HTS code is. If that moves to another country, it's still moved under the same HTS code. When it comes into the US, it's brought in under that same exact code. So it doesn't matter where it came from. It matters where it originated from. with that particular number.
And that's why it's important for like IDP Direct to have Romania, Mexico, Indonesia, in China, is because you couldn't just make everything in China and then freight it over to Indonesia at a 0% tariff and then ship it in from Indonesia.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, and they did have, there was this de minimis thing, which a lot of companies, and this hurt a lot of companies as well, was like they would make products in China, they would ship them to Mexico, you know, in containers, warehouse them there. And then as you went on Amazon Prime and you ordered your product for, you know, 30, 40, 50 bucks, whatever that was, it would ship from Mexico into the US, and it didn't get hit with any tariffs because it was under $800 in terms of value for that product, right? So now they closed that loophole. So now anything that's coming in is being hit with the China tariff because that's where the product originated from, even if it's shipping from Mexico.
Oh man.
So it's hurt a lot of e-com companies.
And I think the hard part for me, I was thinking about this with, remember when we covered like the cotton totes versus the single-use plastic shopping bags, and how there was like this tote crisis. Well, like over 20% of the world's cotton comes from the Uyghur people in China, right? And we can actually make cotton totes here in the US. And it has created a cost that makes it beneficial to make it here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but what happens to, let's say that occurs, like it's not good the way that the Chinese people treat the Uyghur people. There's no, it's a humanitarian crisis. Does it get even worse by putting our thumb down with these tariffs and saying even the most basic things that you can make, the US is not going to buy them? It's such a complicated issue, man. Like,
yeah. I'm reading a book now called Waste Wars. I think everyone should read. It's really important information about how corrupt some of these systems are and can get when there are huge deltas in tariffs and huge differences in the way different countries treat things. So check that out. It's really interesting.
Doing that right now. Waste Wars. Is that like Star Wars where we just send all of our trash to space?
It's in space. It's really good.
Okay. Is it going to have, is that the one with the ring and Harry Potter takes it to destroy the Death Star? Is that the same?
It's a prequel to that.
But in terms of like kind of going back to what you should be doing right now is
take a deep breath, right?
Yeah. Take a second. Don't do anything. You know, you can be looking and you can be having conversations, but don't switch anything because things are moving so fast that you might end up, even if everything worked out perfectly and your product or your packaging or whatever it is that you're shifting looks exactly the same and same quality, you might end up worse because of the shift in these tariffs.
Right.
Charlie's absolutely correct. I would.
Yes.
It's absolutely true. It's the similar conditions are happening in China, and we support them with inadvertently, I think, with our policies to get more cotton to be produced in that area. But Avelio, I know we're over time, but I am curious. Do you think it's a good time not to make a quick snap decision to change, but rather to strengthen the resilience of your supply chain? Because you almost need to have maybe secondary, tertiary, and whatever fourth
Plan B, Plan C. Yeah.
Like you should have qualified vendors so that you can know, let's say whatever the things that you guys make it, you have somebody who only sources from China and they're like, I'm kind of stuck right now, but let me qualify IDP Direct to make these in Mexico and Indonesia. Doesn't mean that they're going to make the change right away.
Right.
But I've always felt like for supply chain resiliency, it's a great idea to have a B, C, and even now I think D suppliers for critical packaging items.
I agree.
100%. I would say like most, you have to be at a certain size, obviously, but once, you know, for these really large brands, you should have at least, you know, you should be dual sourcing, right? So you've got some shift, you've got some flexibility, even if it's like one source is producing 60%, the other one's producing 40%. They shouldn't be neighbors. They shouldn't be in the same country, because if one has an issue, you're going to have an issue for both. be able to move products around and be able to shift quantities if you need to. And this was, would I say that you should have a US supplier on some complex packaging and one in Asia? Probably not, just because of cost of goods. Like US is going to be 4 or 5 times, if not more, the cost of something else coming in from Europe or Asia. You are not going to be able to really compete. But yeah, I think it's definitely a time that you should be looking, vetting, having conversations, but don't make any quick decisions. Right.
Yeah,
that's the biggest challenge. The last thing is there's brands that are now talking. I know like Hermes and a few other companies out there are on their pricing and on their tags. They're now planning on putting a line item for tariffs, right? Because they've got to increase their prices, but they don't want to say this $1,000 product is now $2,000. It's going to be this $1,000 product is still $1,000, but now you've got an extra $1,000 of tariffs.
That's a great idea, actually.
Right, because it shows the consumer this is what's forcing the increase in the price.
This isn't our fault, right?
Exactly. No, and I think that's if you want something changed, maybe that's the way that you do it, is you push for consumers to make that change, and it doesn't matter which party you support. At the end of the day, what's going to make your company stronger? What's going to allow you to employ people? What's going to allow you to stay off the breadline?
Yeah,
right.
And to be totally clear, it drives me crazy. The countries don't pay the tariffs. The tariffs are paid by the companies that are importing the items.
And eventually by the consumer, right?
And then that cost is either they can choose to eat the cost if they want to, if they have the margins, or they're more than likely going to pass that on to the consumer. Nobody's
got 125% margin.
No, this is basic. This is basic economics. There's nothing like political about that. It's just call it what it is. And I think that's why it's such a smart move by these companies to say you have a sales tax. Now you have an import tax, and this is the import tax that you're paying to the United States federal government. That's what's happening. And it until tomorrow.
Well, that's just it. Again, you might make a change today because now it's like everybody's 10% except for China. You might be like, oh, I'm gonna pull my product out of China and go into Vietnam. Vietnam could be 90% tomorrow.
Yep.
And then what? And to be honest, Vietnam, Cambodia, there's a ton of factories out there. Most of those factories are Chinese owned, right? When things shifted a few years ago, suppliers and manufacturers in China are like, hey, we're going to open up a factory in Vietnam and in Indonesia, or not Indonesia, in Cambodia, right? So like for us, like our factory, like our first factory was Indonesia. Like we started there and we kind of grew out of there because of the supply chain, kind of strengthening that supply chain.
That's where you grew up, right?
I did. I grew up on the streets of Bali.
In the factory.
Yes. That's why I moved around so much. Yeah. So I don't know, man. If you guys have questions, drop them in the comments. If you guys see anything new, let us know. If now is a good time to buy, let us know. And hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully people didn't sell on the way down out of fear.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
That's it. Let us know any questions. We'll be answering.
All we do is win, no matter what.